Okay, well, look, let's move on to Ukraine then and bring this up. This is from the Russian intelligence agencies through a media release. Let's do a quick translation of it. It says NATO members are preparing a campaign to discredit Zelensky. So this is the 3rd of February. The Russian Foreign Intelligence Service published this press release stating that they, quotes, according to information received by the SVR, NATO headquarters is increasingly thinking about a change of power in Ukraine. They're saying that NATO at all costs wants to maintain what remains of Ukraine as an anti-Russian enclave, and they want to, quotes, freeze the conflict by bringing everyone to the table for what the Russians claim NATO is calling the beginning of a settlement. So Russia claims NATO views the only impediment to this scenario is Zelensky himself. And they say that NATO wants him gone. And they're saying in the run-up to the election campaign, NATO headquarters is preparing a large-scale operation to discredit Zelensky. One of the things they say that NATO will eventually release is Zelensky and his close associates have misappropriated $1.5 billion that was intended to be used to buy ammunition for the war. And the Russians are also saying that NATO will reveal that Zelensky and his crew will have withdrawn the salaries of 130,000 dead Ukrainian servicemen to foreign bank accounts by listing them as alive when in fact they were already dead. Now, around the same time that the Russians published that press release, Politico carried this article reporting that Russia was getting behind US calls for an election in Ukraine. So suddenly the US calling for elections in Ukraine, which seems to fit with what the Russians were saying in that press release. And this call was made by US Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, who said in most democracies, elections taking place even during wartime, I think it's important. I believe it's good for democracy. The beauty of a strong democracy is having more than one potential candidate. So Politico quotes voters as saying that Kellogg and other White House officials have floated the idea of pushing Ukraine to agree to elections as part of an initial truce with Russia. But Politico is also reporting that Ukraine currently can't hold legal elections because the constitution doesn't allow elections during wartime and while Ukraine is under martial law. And of course, Zelensky put martial law in place at the time the Russian special operation began. But even Zelensky's political rivals are apparently against the idea, at least according to the Kyiv Post. And who do you think they quote? Well, no one other than Petro Poroshenko. So do you think he means it, Patrick?
Absolutely not. So what Petro Poroshenko is such a political animal. So to what he's doing is very clever. To the Ukrainian audience, he's saying basically, no, we don't want elections. Because if he says we want elections, the Azov battalions and the Nazi factions will absolutely flatten him, possibly even chase him out of the country or kill him. Okay. So to the international audience, Poroshenko is basically saying that we will not negotiate with the Russians, and there will be no peace until we recover all of our territory, including Crimea, 1991 borders. So he's talking to the British government and to Washington. So externally, he's putting himself out as a candidate for the election, a hardliner that is not going to take anything from the Russians. You see how clever Petro Poroshenko has turned into quite a skilled politician over the years.
In the meantime, in an effort, well, the question was it in an effort to shore up Zelensky or to discredit him? Well, Piers Morgan was deployed to interview him. Let's have a quick listen to this.
President, let me be clear. I do not personally believe that is the reason he invaded Ukraine. I think he just wanted to get his hands on Ukraine, and he didn't care how many people he killed to do it. But there is, as you know, what he tells his people is that he's doing this for the protection of the national security of Russia, that he couldn't have Ukraine joining NATO because that would present an existential threat to the security of the Russian people. I don't agree with that, and that's what he tells his people. And so I'm moving forward to when you're all sitting around a table and you're trying to negotiate your way to an end of the hot stage of the war. I just don't see any way he allows you, as part of that settlement, to become a full member of NATO. And that's why it's interesting to me that you're now outlining a potential plan B, if you like, which involves enough guarantees of security, particularly with the military, that you're able to deter him from attacking again. And I think is that a correct understanding of your position?
NATO is not today, but in some time in the future, then all this path when we go to NATO, all this time when we are waiting, no matter how long it takes, and unfortunately does not depend on us. If this process is protracted for years or decades, not because of us, but because of partners, then we have absolutely just question what will be defending us against this evil for this whole time on this whole path. Which support package, which missiles, will we be given nuclear weapons? Then let them give us nuclear weapons.
So there you go. He's dying for nukes.
Listen, when I first saw that, I thought Piers Morgan has just scored the biggest own goal, because he was humiliated by Tucker Carlson in the Riyadh interview that Tucker did with Piers Morgan. It was humiliating for Piers Morgan. I mean, he really exposed himself as the sort of shallow propagandist, the sort of Murdoch stooge, the warmonger, you know, the completely cheap reality TV show personality. But now, looking at this, what Morgan did is he just destroyed any negotiated settlement opening talks by putting Zelensky out talking about nukes. I mean, if Russia needs a public reason to go all the way to Kyiv, Zelensky just laid it out on a silver salver, and Morgan is the butler basically serving up the dish on that. So, but now I'm thinking, if he is a propaganda stooge for Rupert Murdoch, he's playing a role, isn't he? Mm-hmm. He's basically set up Zelensky, who everybody knows is a complete buffoon, who is a total egomaniac and a megalomaniac, who really is on borrowed time. Let's face it, a couple of months, Zelensky's on a jet to Switzerland or, you know, London and Mayfair to hang out with Zelensky at Lancashire House or whatever, or off to Washington. He's gone. So all he can do here is give the Russians much more leverage in negotiations, which they've just got.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.